So, thank you for recording. So I hope everyone is able to see this. Everyone is able to see this, right?
Yes.
So, okay, so yesterday we talked about one of the usage case, which is the first grammatical case. Very interesting case, actually. And this case seems to be very interesting and one of probably my most favorite case is the first grammatical case. And there are many reasons. And this particular case, even though it may seem that it's not that difficult, but the very essence of this case is very related to how most Tibetan perceive phenomena, how they think about different phenomena. Like so therefore, and the very and one of the most interesting thing about this is that everything after this will barely have a clear existence as an individual. What do I mean by this is that everything after that will have meaning that will be associated with the meaning of other things. And then together they will bring out a meaning as an entire structure. So this is the case that most probably deals with the individuality of each name. So that, and the definition says that the first grammatical case is a grammatical case which depicts. Depicts means show. So normally I think that sometimes I'm speaking too fast. So today I will try to slow down a little bit. So because I want every one of you to understand this case. So to understand, it's not that difficult. It's the very essence of the case, which is interesting. So the first grammatical case is a grammatical case which depicts, meaning it shows. What does it show? So when we say depict, it is similar to saying it functions. It does this job, so it functions. So what does it do? It shows the meaning or essence. Essence is similar to meaning. These both are two similar words in this context. So essence and meaning are the same here. Of a term, this is classified as name and word. So and then it does it individually. So name and term. So we see that the first grammatical case, right? The first grammatical case is a grammatical case which depicts the meaning or essence of a term. And this is the definition in Tibetan. Chö means phenomena. Chö means phenomena. Chö means phenomena. Anything that is existing is chö. So chö kangshik means whichever, which one, or whichever one phenomena. Rang means itself. Rang means its. Wo means essence, nature, or in this context, we will consider it to be meaning. Zor means mainly. So mainly what it does, mainly it shows the essence, mainly it shows the essence, the nature, or the meaning of a phenomena by the depiction. So these are some of the things that you have to understand. How does it show? So the question is, how does it show the essence, the meaning, or the nature of phenomena is by depicting it through name and words. So you can either, so let us do this. Instead of the small n, which always tends to confuse us, let's just call it naming word. But the reason why I didn't do that in the beginning is because I thought that there would be confusion with the word. Some may think that, oh, this is a naming word, so it should be a word. So this is the reason why I didn't call it a naming word. So therefore, you see that sometimes, so there's always a bit of confusion. If I just call it a name, then you'll think like, oh, there's a name with a capital N, and there is a name with a small letter, lowercase n. And this seems confusing. Then I'll change it to naming word. Now, one may think, oh, it's naming word, so it should be word. And this is the reason why I didn't want to use this term, because it's very misleading. But still, I think that in some cases, this may be better than just saying name, because it just shows that it's a combination of consonant and vowel, which shows a meaning that is just to name something. So how does the first grammatical case depict or show the essence or the meaning of a term? That is by representing it in the group of naming word or words. It could be either words or naming words. So now there's actually a small sort of question here. Okay, let me write the question here. The question will be, what about the bound morpheme words? What about the words that cannot show a meaning by themselves? And this is it. The thing is that in the first grammatical case, we will only consider the free morpheme words when it comes to words. So we have only two, right? It is either the adjective or the action word. What we are not going to consider is the companion word, the ornamental word, and finally, we're not going to consider the connective particles under the first grammatical case. Why? Because they cannot have an essence by themselves. They need to be associated with others. That is the reason why this cannot be a first grammatical case. So the question that could be is, why? What about the bound morpheme words? Because these are also words. So they should become a first grammatical case usage. And then I'll say, no, this is not the case, because these cannot have a meaning by themselves without associating with other words at all. So there is no question about including them into this group, because they cannot have, if they don't have an essence or a meaning by themselves, then there is no possibility of having individuality. So now you see the importance of individuality here. So this argument, what about the bound morpheme word? We'll simply say, no, bound morpheme words are not the usage of first grammatical case. And then you may ask, why? Because it's a word. And then I'll say, even though it's a word, definitely it's a word, but the basic criteria that the first grammatical case gave us was that these particular grammatical structure, be it a naming word or word, represents the essence or meaning individually. even if you don't say individually, it depicts those things without being associated. And the individuality is further enhanced by our recompound particle. So that is where we see that, oh, recompound particle, yes. This is why these are important. To show the individuality of the meaning, to show the very individuality of the meaning, we use these recompound particles. Otherwise, recompound particle seems like an extra. We already have these punctuations. Why the recompound word? Why the recompound particle? Sorry. That is the question that might arise. So, to establish the individuality. So whenever you're going to associate anything with the first grammatical case, please associate the word individuality without being associated with any other word. And that's the characteristic of the first grammatical case. And so we cannot have these bound morpheme, because when we write them by themselves, even if we add those connective particle, the recompound particle, they will not have any meaning. And therefore, we see that in the first grammatical usage of first grammatical case, we do not consider bound morpheme words. We only consider two types of words, that is, under the free morpheme words, which is adjective and action word. And under the naming word, we accept everything. Any name is. It could be a common noun, a proper noun. It could be a name of a group. For example, if we say to draw. We write this. So if we say to draw. So these are the beast, the animals, the beings which goes with their head down. So to draw. So these are animals, or animal realm, or the realm is animal. So let's say animal. So when we say animal, this is a word that is a generalized term. And there are many individual groups under this. There are dogs, there are cats, there are cows. So any type of name is accepted under the first grammatical case. And we've already said that the first grammatical case and the eighth grammatical case are the only grammatical case in which these will not be used as a connective particle. They are particle and they have the name connective particle, but they will not connect anything. So please make sure that you're noting down these, because these are the exceptions. So, and then this first grammatical case is the only one that you will see is mostly used with single name. Though in some cases of eighth grammatical case, you'll see the same, but not in any other. You won't see it in any other. And you'll know the reason when we study those grammatical case, that you'll know why not other. Why only these two? So therefore, the first grammatical case, for example, we have, so let me give you examples. Yak, ko. Sim, so. Gao, sao. Shin, no. And J means such and such. So we see that yak is the animal, yak, the Tibetan animal yak, which is normally domesticated by the nomads and the semi-nomads, those people who are both nomads and farmers. And then those nomads, they domesticate them. And then mostly everything Every part of the body of yak is used to make something. And one of the most important part would be the hide, the thick skin, the hide, to make the tent. And then definitely we use the meat. People eat the meat. And then there are other parts which are also used. So yak, it's an animal. Yakko, simply yak, no association with anything. Sim, so, means mind. Gao means happy. Sao means ground. Shinno means other. Now you may say, so let me give you another argument here. So I'm sorry that I'm bringing all the arguments. So these are the arguments that came while I was learning this particular particle, the first grammatical particle. And the question was, why do we need this particle when we can just write yak? That was the question that I had. Or if we could just write noun. Why do I even need the particle? This is individual. Yak means yak, noun means noun. But no, that's not the case. Later, it dawned upon me when I continued learning this particle, this particular usage case, is that when you write it without this particular usage, with this particular particle, it doesn't say that it is an individual. It is a word. Definitely, it's a word, but in nowhere it says that it is individually representing the name. Meaning that this could be a part of a sentence. But when you write it with that recompound particle, it is established that there is no sentence, that these are by themselves. So therefore, the individuality comes very eminent with, comes very apparent or very clear with the first grammatical word, first grammatical case. Otherwise, we may say that, oh, it's like when you translate it, it's not going to get translated. You see, yakko will not be translated as yak and ko. No, it will not be translated as such. And if you say that there may be certain punctuation representation of these in other language, that's also not a case. Then you may say, what's the use when you cannot interpret this in other language? And the thing is that it has to do more with the understanding of the case rather than just a translation of it in the English. That's the problem with some of these particles. Very much with this one. And therefore, many think that the recompound particle is not needed because individuality comes with the name of the phenomena itself. But in the grammatical structure, in the world of the grammatical structure, of Tibetan grammatical structure, that doesn't seem to be the case. So therefore, okay, so there are two parts of the first grammatical case usage narratives. First one is either name or word. You can either use a name or a word. And then, for example, for name, we have yak, which is the animal yak. And then we have the action word, let's say, dro, which means to go, dro. Or let's say chin, that's chinno, right? And then adjective, ringo, which means long. Okay, so this is the first usage of the recompound particle, the first grammatical case. Now, the rest of the usage. The first usage is the first grammatical case. The second usage is it's used with a narrative. So or statement, sorry, it's used with a statement. So what's a statement? Ming tang cik, words and names. Ming is names, cik is words. Ming da cik toma dupa ne, Drubpay tuandenki ngagi chenwa. Chenwa means a rosary or a chain. Could be understood as both. It could be a rosary or a chain, mostly translated as rosary, but also understood as a chain because the first is associated with the second, like the chain. See, what happens when we have a chain? The first round ring thing is connected to the second round ring, and then the third one is connected to the second ring. The fourth one is connected to the third ring. So you see that from the top to the bottom, each and every part is associated with each other. Or just like the rosary, like from the very first beat to the last beat are associated or in a structure by themselves with each other. So the usage of this is actually one of the usage of the ornamental word. Here what we did is we gave the characteristic of rosary or chain to the words to show that these words are associated with each other. Okay, so it is compound of many words and names. So it's compound means many, gathering many words and names come together. Do means to collect or to compound. And Drubpay, Drup means to form. Drup means to form. Form what? Meaning. A chain of sound that has a meaning. Ngak, which means the sound that comes, or speech. You can either say it, you can either translate it as speech or sound. A sound, a chain of sound, meaning many sounds coming together. And these sound, when we look at the meaning of these sounds, some may be names or naming words. Let me change this to naming words, or naming word, or it could be words or naming word. And they are associated with each other like the chains, right? They're related or associated with each other. And finally, they give a meaning. It cannot be a meaningless. It has to have a meaning. So that is a statement or jeba. Mingdan si tuma dune Drubpay tuandenki ngaki tenwa. Ngaki tenwa means chain of sound. Chain of sound, sometimes also translated as speech. So it's more preferential. If you prefer sound, use sound. If you prefer speech, use speech. The difference is the usage of which one you want to use. So which forms a chain. So it forms a chain, which is the translation for Tengwa. You can also translate it. The more correct translation would be rosary, which we always translate it as. So therefore, sometimes please understand that sometimes I tend to translate things more inferentially. Okay, I remember that. Okay, this is the last. This is the one with the. Okay, let me see if I can see what was written. Ornamental word. Okay, so I will try my best. The thing is that ornamental word in poetry, we use them in poetry most of the time. So like the ornamental word that was shared this morning, and normally we just write a verse, and then ornamental words they're not some special kind of words. Sometimes they're just ornamental because of the usage of them in a particular manner. That is to first to state the nature of things by the way it is. Second, to use it as an example. And then third, to use the very feature as the physical example of something. So let me give you an example of one of these. So let me just give you an example. Let me see what was written. Yes, we can somewhat say that, like a metaphor in one case. So, but the strangest thing is that we don't translate it as a metaphor. That's the thing. So, it may seem that this, because metaphor is the entire usage, right? A metaphor is like to say like as brave as. So it's an entire statement given as a usage, and definitely you can so quite similar, I think, but I don't know why it's not translated in that manner. Maybe it has some unsimilarities. So sorry, dissimilarities with the word. So we see that in this kegi karsil tawa. So what we did here is that we used the word moon to represent the face because of the character of being as fair as the moon. So ornamental word, though we call them ornamental word, we must understand that it's more or less a phrase in every usage. Instead of being an individual word, it's always a phrase. But still, even if it's a phrase, we'll only consider this to be the ornamental word. Even though we understand that this entire phrase, Shalre Kasil Dawa, which means face as fair as moon, is the entire meaning of this phrase or this usage. But we'll not consider this entire phrase as the ornamental word, but only this. This is the only ornamental word here. And then you may say that, oh, but then this has a meaning that is of the moon. But I'll say that no, here it doesn't have the meaning of just being a moon. It is talking about the characteristic of moon that is being used as an ornament, exemplary ornament for the face. And this is the reason why ornamental words by usage are phrase, but by their own representation, they're a simple word. That's simply just one word. So even though the exact usage is this entire phrase that says as white as or as fair as the moon, face as fair as the moon. But the thing is that the concept of ornamental word tells us that this is the only thing that is considered to be the ornamental word here. Why? Because its character, it along with its character is ornamented to the face. Therefore, this is the only ornamental word here. And definitely, I know that there may be many questions. So we, definitely, please keep those questions. We will, if you have questions regarding this ornamental word, we will deal with them. Okay, so this is the example for ornamental word. Okay, then now going back to the statement. So we have so type of statements. We can either have sentence, sikdrup, verse, sikje, hikbep, paragraph, hikbep tuma, multiple paragraph, or you can have examples where the entire narrative, for example, an entire story doesn't have any recompound particle, but at the end may have one recompound particle. Okay, so now I have given examples for each of the cases. The first one is recompound particle with sentence. So if you use it in a sentence, kong hasar chinno. Kong hasar chinno, which means he went to Hasa. And we see the no at the end. So this entire sentence is a single narrative or statement. Now, recompound. Kong is a more respectful way of saying him. Or it's more like they, but in a more respectful manner. Recompound particle with multiple sentences. So it's she, it's not she. Okay, chue shebani, gönam, chebar chawatang, nani, rani ki nang semla, kogu. Teyang nang chu ni, kansa rangi nang sem ki time, gön teda silver chebar ino. So we see that here we have multiple sentences, and all of them is a part of the same narrative, meaning from the beginning till the end, they come under one single narrative, and they're talking about the meaning of the word chu or nang chu. It states that chu, which is practice of dharma, means to just thoroughly clean the imperfections or the faults. And nang, which means rangi nasem, which means nang means one's own consciousness or mind. So kogo means should be understood. So nang should be understood as one's own inner mind or mind. Inner because of nang. So inner mind. Teya nang chu ni. So therefore, what is nang chu or inner? So Buddhism or nang chu is kansa, which means person. Rengi ki nang sim ki time gun, which means a person whose own the impurities or the stain. Tima means stain of imperfection or faults that is in one's own. Rang means own, one's own mind. Teda means those. Silver means to thoroughly cleanse, to thoroughly perish, or to thoroughly clean out. silver. Chebar, you know. So what is nangche? Nangche is to thoroughly clean or cleanse the stain of one's imperfection or faults from one's own mind. So this is an entire narrative in a single narration. Now at the end, recompound particle at the end of a verse. So this is a very interesting words. So it's a very interesting verse. So I'll just read it. 강치 땡주 마임베 총가 여보 마임바 대체 똥바 마임베 총가 여보 마이노. So you see that here no is the recompound lertu at the end, and this is a verse. This is a verse. So you see that no, what it does is that it states that the entire narration from this point to this point is a single narration, but the writing style is in the verse form. Okay, so these are the examples for lerdu. Now we will deal with today's lesson. We'll continue with today's lesson. Let's see how much we can finish. So we'll try as much as possible. So and we'll have you can ask me questions at the end of at the end. So let us open this. Okay, so let me share this. Where is it? It's here. Okay, so I hope everyone's able to see this. So today we're going to, now this is going to be the last part of the naming word and first grammatical particle. So this is going to be the last part of it. After which we're going to start with the particle used in place of la. And from from this point onwards, there will be many usage cases that you'll have to understand. Not difficult, but many. And when I say many, it's not very many, but comparatively more. So, mingi namtang sam ngonju. So, synonymic. Very interesting thing, which we have in Tibetan, the synonymic. It's, as I have written in the group, it's one of the five minor sciences. And when we will discuss about the five minor sciences in the conversation class, not now, later, very later, probably next year, I will make sure that I spend one class explaining a little bit about the five major and five minor sciences. And it's not something that is new to Tibet. I mean, those were already there in India, five major science and the five minor science. And those who have mastered 5 out of these were called Pandit. So, okay, so the word synonymic or ngunju. You can either say mingi namtang or you can say ngunju. And very interesting, like it's in one of those series of grammar books that has been not recently. I think it was back in 2018. I still remember it. So it was in 2018. Maybe the publishing was 1 or 2 years before, but it was still new because getting them was quite difficult. It's a series of almost 31 books only on grammar, published in Tibet by publishing house in Tibet. Very interesting things written in those grammar books. And one of the interesting things that they wrote in the first chapter, which I was reading, is that they talked about they wrote and they talked about the commentaries of kings of China, the emperor of China, on the first grammatical case. So we see that first grammatical case was quite famous. And then they were mention of some of the other texts that was composed by Tumi Sambuddha, one of which was solely on the synonymic. It was on synonymic. So one of those texts, not me remembering clearly, it was probably the fifth one, was on the synonymic. So synonymic was actually a very important part of Tibetan culture and tradition. So many of the proofs come from the documents found in the caves of Tungo, and these are cited in that book. Very well cited book. It's a book with a very good reference. So, but we're going to discuss it not in too much detail. Definition: synonymic are words that have a similar meaning to the commonly used terms. So these are words that which have same meaning to the most of the commonly used words, but these are usually phrase instead of a single word. These are usually phrase. So when I say phrase, I mean these could be derived names with explanation over the name. So sometimes these are mostly for these are both for derived and actual name, but these are very useful when you use them for actual name, because we know that actual name are the name that are given without any reasoning or logic. So these synonymic are actually has the same meaning, but are derived through the logic. So these are names that you can use in place of those actual names, and they can become the derived name for that actual name. So let me tell you. So we have Pema or Padma, because Pema or Padma. So Pema, which totally tells us that it's lotus. So the synonymic for lotus is Tsoke, lake born. Since the lotus are born in the lake, so it's called lake born. Or it's also called Tamke, which means mud born, born in mud. So we see that it is very, very logical, and both of these names are derived names. And most of the times these are used in poems. So these are mostly used in poems. And then we have other synonymics for Buddha, Sangye. The first synonymic is Gelwa, which means the victor, the one who has won. The second one is Deshik, which means gone to bliss, the one who has gone to bliss, who has liberated from suffering and gone to bliss. Kunke means omniscient, someone who knows everything, of everything there is not to know in all the times, be it past, present, or future. All-knowing or omniscient. And then Namting means guide. Nam refers to the six sentient beings. De means to pull them or to lead them or to pull them to the Pure Land, the one who pulls the sentient beings, the 6 sentient beings to the Pure Land, or the guide. Then Mi Senge is the lion of humans. So lion of men sometimes, or lion of human, which is given to the Buddha because of the fearless nature. Like the lion is fearless in the forest, similarly fearless. And just like the roar of lion silences all the unnecessary sound in the jungle when he passes, or lets the other animal know of his, and the magnificence of that roar. Similarly, the roar of the speech of truth of Buddha is similar. So the lion of men, or lion of human. Then Chomdende, which means the victorious one, the one who has won the battle against the ignorance. So the victorious one. So we see that all of these ngunje, or the synonymic, have a meaning, and they show a meaning. Very interesting, actually. So the other one is for the duke, which is thunder. So for thunder, we have jingita, the sound of clouds, because the thundering comes because of the sound made by the clouds. So the sound of clouds. Yarke, which means yar, which is the yarka, which is the summer. So the sound that comes during the summer, or yes, me singing. Oh yes. So uh, so please, this is incorrect. So we need to have a narrow kyugu here. So we'll correct it and send it. So we have yarkenga, which is the summer drum, because it's usually rainy during the summer. And since it's rainy, it thunders a lot. Then similarly, we have some of the, and you can also find these, actually, you can also find these, sorry, we can find these synonymic in the Hindi also. So we have Nima, which is known as the sun. So the common usage word is sun, Nima. It is also known as Namkhe Norhu, which is the jewel of the sky. Then we have Tadun Wangpo, the master of 7 horses. Each horses, so each horse, which is said to be green in color. So the master of 7 horses. Then Nangche, which means the illuminator, because when the sun rises, the darkness fades and everyone can see. So it's the daytime, so illuminator. Or Medum, which is sphere of fire, or could also be known as the ball of fire, or sphere of fire. So you see that these are the synonymic, and there are so many more. There are multiple texts composed on synonymic, because it's actually very good to know these synonymics, especially for things like Buddha or Bodhisattva, so that you can understand you can understand why Buddha is all-knowing from different perspective. Like this tells us Buddha is all-knowing, knows everything. This tells us that Buddha is a victor. Victor from what? Victor from the ignorance and the afflicted mind. the influence of afflicted mind. Deshe, it tells us gone to bliss. The one who has already liberated himself from every form of suffering, so gone to bliss. Then the guide, the one who leads all the 6 sentient beings to the pure realm. And then the lion of men, Mi Senge, gives us different perspective of what a Buddha is through different synonymic. And it gives us more information too. Like these are the usage of similar synonymic, which tells us the sun. And why do we use Tadu Wangpo? Because in this particular synonymic, we're referring the sun not as the sun that's in the sky. No, we're referring to it as the god, the sun god, which rides a chariot with 7 horses. And here we understand that it's a sphere of fire. So therefore, synonymics have multiple function and multiple uses, especially in poetry. It sounds very much, it sounds so much better when we use the synonymic. And if I tell you about more mundane usage of this in the more mundane usage of these in the poem, is that sometimes you may want a line with, let's say, 13 syllable. And if you write Nima, you can only get 6 or 7 syllable. So you use these type of synonymics which have more syllable to fill that gap. So that is also one of the usage of these synonymic. So from this point, we are done with the second portion of our Tree of Excellent Speech. So we are done with the first, we did the first, which was on the basic sounds. And this is the second one, which is naming word, word. The second portion. And after this, and then we also have synonymic that we added here, but we are going to discuss about synonymic later. Very much later. When I say later, most probably in the advanced conversation class, where you'll already be equipped with so much more vocabulary. That is when we will discuss the synonymic there. With the text, of course, on synonymic. Yes, so now from this point, we're yes, so this is because of what I said before during the class, is that sometimes it seems that when I say name with the capital N and the small n, it may seem more confusing. So I may use it as naming word. But then that also brings us another argument that says that if it's naming word, there is a word at the end. So is it a word? No, it's not a word. So there's confusion there too. So in both cases, we have a certain amount of confusion. So it's a preferential thing. If you prefer to accept the first confusion with the uppercase and lowercase n, if you think that's not very confusing, then you can use that, continue to use that. If you're happy using naming word and words, you can also use that. So yes, so that would be the thing. But in most of the notes, most of the notes, I will be using name and the capital and the small n. So the other one was just simple alternative that was provided that you may use. Yes, naming word name. Yes. So this is that you can use it like this. So it's just an addition we did today. That's so. Okay. So to this portion, we are already done with the second portion of our text. So we have already said that we have 4 portions. The first one is the basic sounds. The second one is naming word, either name or naming word or words. This we have already done now. Now we're entering the longest portion of the text, which is about the rest of the connective particles. So we're done with the first connective particle, or the first grammatical case, which is a usage, and then we have the first connective particle or the particle, that is the ladu. Now we're left with the rest of the 7 dependent particle and the independent particles. So this will be, from this point onwards, it will be the longest portion. Once we're done with that, definitely we're done with almost 90% of the entire text. Then we'll be left with a small portion of particles, the alternative particles, and then we have punctuations. That's it. And we will introduce most of the punctuations. So please remember that. We will introduce most of the punctuations that you see. So, okay, so now we begin. So another important aspect of usage case of connective particle is understanding the subject, chebapo, which is the doer of the action. And then we have action, which is chawa. And then we have object, which is le or chawe yul, sorry. Chawe yul means the object of action. Chawe yul means object of action. Or it could be also written as le. Chawa, action. Subject, chepapo. Okay, so from this point onward, we will be going even more technical with everything. So first, subject are part of a sentence that represents the doer of an action. So subject or chebapo, these are nothing but part of a sentence. So they're used in a sentence. So when they're used in the sentence, what they do is they are representing the doer of an action. So someone who does an action. So therefore, understand that this is always going to be a name. The subject is always going to be a name. It will not. So subject are part of a sentence that represents or shows the doer, the one who does an action. And there are two types of subject. The primary subject, chebapo, and the secondary subject. So we see that there are two types of subject. The primary subject, chebapo, and the secondary subject, chepa. Now the question is, what is chepapo, the primary subject, and what is chepa, the secondary subject? Okay, first, primary subject, chepapo, are the main doer of an action. So they are the main doer of the action. So what do we mean by the main doer of an action? It is either something that is, but it is represented as a whole unit by itself. So it cannot be a part of something. It has to be a whole unit of itself. So when I say in whole unit, what I mean is that it cannot be a component of the main subject. For example, it cannot be a hand. Hand is a component of a person, and person is a main subject. It cannot be a tool, because the tool is a part. Tool is something that is operated by the person. So things like hammer, axe, things like car, they cannot be main object because they require a person to do those action. Okay, so there are two types. So when I say main doer, these are the phenomena or things that can do action by themselves without relying on yes, chebapo is similar to agent. You can also say agent, but normally I prefer subject to the word agent. So, but yes, you can say agent. So, agent of action. So, chebapo is the main subject, and there are two types of primary subject. One is the conscious primary subject, simde chebapo, and then there is non-conscious primary subject, simme chebapo. Simme, also known as pempo, or things that doesn't have consciousness, object that doesn't have consciousness. So you may say, oh, but you said that cars and axe and tools cannot be considered. So what are you talking when you're saying things that are non-conscious? Because don't all non-conscious subject require a person to operate? And that's incorrect. There are things like planets that can revolve that can revolve or rotate by themselves. There is tide, ocean tide, that rise and fall by themselves. It doesn't require human. And there is wind that blows without the requirement of a person. But all of these are non-conscious primary subject. Right? These are non-conscious primary subject. Sime chebapo. Okay, first conscious primary. Okay, first conscious primary subject. Simden chebapo. Simden means having consciousness. Chebapo is primary subject. Primary subject with consciousness. Our subject that possesses intention of the action. So the difference between the conscious and the non-conscious primary subject is the intention of the action. The intention that I want to do this and achieve this from this, that is the intention of the action. So therefore, if it's a subject that has those intention, then it becomes the conscious primary subject. So I was just thinking about an example where so let me just say this. So we have examples in the text of Buddha or Buddhas manifesting or taking manifesting themselves as bridge on big river where people normally drown and die. So to save those Buddhas, they manifest themselves as the bridge. Now we have this question. We may ask, like, oh, in that case, is that bridge conscious or non-conscious? If we say it's non-conscious, we say that then the bridge isn't Buddha, but we say that it's a Buddha because it's the manifestation of because it is a Buddha that's manifested or has manifested as the bridge. So is it non-conscious or is it conscious? So I'll leave that question to you. I'm not going to answer this question. So it's a question for every one of you. Is a bridge that is manifested, or if is a bridge that is manifested by a Buddha, meaning a Buddha turning into a bridge, a conscious or non-conscious primary subject? And this is a question that I leave to every one of you. It's an interesting question. So conscious primary subject, which possesses intention. In the text, it's stated that no, I'll just let you find the answer to this. It's interesting. So are subjects that possess intention of action. For example, if I was to go and say like Dorje ki kalasa, means Dorje eats food. We know that Dorje has the intention to eat food because he has consciousness, so he has intention. So similarly, everything that is with consciousness or with which is conscious has intention, and they have the intention of action, be it willingly or not willingly. I mean, so a person, a human, a person, a cow, pachuk is cow, Dorje is a name. So these are all conscious primary subject. The second one is non-conscious primary subject, seme chebapo. So these are subject that do not possess intention of action. When the wind, so for example, let's make an example, like so some of you are carrying like a big pile of paper with you, documents or paper with you, and then suddenly a strong wind blows and it blows away all the paper here and there everywhere. So does the wind have the intention to blow that paper, you know? No, it doesn't. But did it blow the paper? Yes, it did. Similarly, water. For example, like when the water runs down the hill, when it rushes down the hill, it makes those sound when it hits the rock. So does it make the sound? Yes. Does it have the intention? No. Similarly, the rock. The rock could fall down. Does it have the intention? No. Does it still fall? Yes. And we will understand that with both of these, with the difference of these subject, the kind of action word that follows each of these subjects are different. This is something that we'll also understand. So now the second is the secondary subject. So what is the secondary subject, or cheba? So secondary subject are component of the primary subject. So there are component. It could be so a person is a main subject, but a person's hand is a component. Or any tool, like for example, hammer, axe, or the car, are all secondary subject because it requires the person to operate them. It requires the person. A hand needs a person's consciousness to operate. You cannot say that without the person being dead, you cannot operate the hand. So it requires the person. So it's a part of person. So even though we say that it is held by the hand, we understand that the hand which is holding something is doing it because of the intention of the person. So it's a component of that person. Similarly, if we say that the axe cuts down the tree, we know that the X doesn't have intention, nor the ability to do it by itself. It's with the intention of the person who is holding the X and the action of the person hitting the tree with the X that when non-conscious primary subject are used as synonymic or of conscious primary subject, they have no intention. I mean, can you give me example for that? Like most of the things that have the intention will have the synonymics of having intention. But let me give you an example. Like this is a good question. Let me rephrase and let me change the question a little bit. Instead of saying if a non primary subject are used as synonymic of, so let's say if a conscious primary subject is used as a synonymic of non-conscious primary subject, then do they have intention? So please let me rephrase this and write it in that way. So I'll use the let me take this. I'll just duplicate this and we'll have, because let me take English. So if a conscious primary subject is used as a synonymic for a non-conscious subject or primary subject, then does it mean that the non-conscious, very wonderful question, conscious primary subject has an intention? So the question is that if a conscious primary subject is used as a synonymic for a non-conscious primary subject, then does it mean that the non-conscious primary subject has an intention? And no, we'll say no. Why? Because though it has the same meaning to that of the word itself, but the context is used. So for example, we have the synonymic for the sun, that is the master of 7 horses, the Duongbo. Let me go back. Let me screen share this. So we have the Duongbo, which is the master of 7 horses. In this case, we're talking about the god, the sun, as the sun god. And therefore, in that case, it has the intention. But if we consider only as the synonymic, then definitely it has the intention. But as the sun, does it have an intention? No. But that's considering sun as the star, not as the god, the sun god. But yes, if we consider it to be the sun god, then it has intention. If it's not the sun god, then no. It's if you're considering, so it's how you consider it to be. If you're saying the same word, you don't need to use the synonymic. If you're saying Nima, the sun, and then you're considering it to be the sun god, then it has the intention. Yes. So it depends on the in how you're perceiving the term sun. If you're perceiving it as the sun god, then it has intention. If you're perceiving it as anything else that cannot have intention, then it doesn't. Lasso. Okay, so we will continue this in the next class. So now, okay, so before we do the random, let me ask, who wants to read today? Is there anyone who wants to volunteering reading the memorization today? Who wants to volunteer for the memorization today? Do we have someone who wants to volunteer to read them, to recite the memorization? No? Okay. Okay, so it's Patinyala. So Patinyala today, please recite it.
Everyone.
Yes.
Okay. Namo Guru Manchu Lo Shaya La Macho Dongye Mepi. Jang Pi Yang La Gudune Ton Mi Leche Sunchumpi. Sunchupi. Ningpo Dordu Shepaja. Yankee Jawa Sel Poru. Jepa Iu et Oshi Sel Jeka So Sunchupi. Ganga Dana Bama A Rala Sanam Jejukchu Dadang Sani Yang Jukte Dani Narala Suntong Sani Ganga Bama To Gada Bama A Nyanjuk Gongodono Bomo O Rolo Soto Lardute Tsoksik Nadu Tsoksik Ladu chez Ladu chez Dadu Dadu chez Kyangja Dayoto Tangta Me O Shen Naming Tajetunja Suraruduna La Tu La Denampa Dunin Te Namie Nishi Dun Patang Denitsekab Namla Juk Sasugaba Dana non Sasugabadata Tu Sasugabadata Tu Ngadana Marala Du Atangtamera Tangru Gikigi Iyingapo Namie Duk Padel Dadang Denam Satachen Ngani Namie Cheda Namie Sumpa Cheda yes Namie Sumpa Cheda Te.
Okay, that's so.
So
I think this,
so
that's the point till for the memorization. So thank you very much for memorizing it. And the other thing is that please, I think memorization is wonderful, but you still have to listen to the recording to work on the pronunciation. Some of the pronunciation, most of them are wonderful. Just one or two words which were pronounced well, but could be better. So wonderful. Thank you very much. So does anyone have question? Just one question today. I'm very sorry. Rest you can ask in the class group. So if anyone has question, I'm ready for just one question. So does anyone have questions regarding today's lesson? Okay, so we'll consider it as no question today. So please revise it, and then you can send the question in the group, and then I will send the assignments. And one of the assignment would be why or why not the bridge that is the Buddha is has a conscious or a non-conscious primary subject. That would be a question. And the rest I will send it to you by tomorrow. Lasso, so please memorize and continue revision, and then please send me questions in the class. I appreciate it every time. Thank you for joining me today. I will see you on Saturday. Lasso and Tashitele.